You're watching Beyond Market. Welcome, I'm Esther Awoniyi. Many thanks for joining us. On today's show, we'll discuss the way forward for elections in Rivers State. You can join today's conversation with the hashtag Beyond Market, and you can follow my Twitter handle too at Esther Awoniyi. Now, some stakeholders in Rivers State have raised concerns about the violent incidents and deaths that accompanied elections in the state. Atedo-Peterside, founder and president, ANAP Foundation, and George Etomi, principal partner, Etomi Partners, join me to discuss the way forward for elections in Rivers State. Before we talk about Rivers State, I want us to start by just quickly hearing your thoughts and your perspective on the just concluded supplementary elections that we had this past weekend. So according to what we have, what's been put out, there were supplementary winners were announced for 4 states out of 7. Rivers State, not among them, still part of one or two contentious states. But I'd like you, Atedo, let me start with you. Your perspective, because this supplementary elections have been described as a show of shame. We saw widespread reports of violence, voter suppression, vote buying, and one would just think that, I mean, we had elections in February, in March. Weren't there any lessons learned?
I think the lessons that were learned is that there are rewards for whoever misbehaves the most. And that's what bankers fear most, what they call the moral hazard problem. So I think what you saw 2 days ago on Saturday was people realizing that all these supplementary elections, it's a case of do whatever it takes, commit murder, commit, fraud, do anything just to get past the milepost and be pronounced winner. And the mood or the sentiment is that there will be no repercussions. And the worst that can happen is that you go to election tribunal and the worst that they reverse it. But we have to go beyond that. It's what we're saying. Murder is murder, whether it's on election day, the day before, the day after. So we shouldn't allow people to get away with crimes just because it's elections. And that's why some of us are saying that it will get progressively worse until the government starts behaving responsibly and calling people to order on account of their actions on election day or any other time of the year.
George, your perspective on this?
Well, clearly there's a disturbing trend of violence in our electioneering process. And like Atedo said, when it doesn't appear that there are any repercussions, then there's no deterrent whatsoever. And so what you see is many politicians employ any means, including murder, to get their way. And then hopefully, if you go to the election tribunal, the worst case, it can be reversed. But the truth is that a process like this is designed to choose leadership. I mean, we were here for several decades when we were under military rule, and everyone said it was an aberration because there was no process by which people chose their leaders. Now, suddenly, this process has come, and we've perhaps witnessed more blood than we found under the military. In fact, by the time the military left office, they used to pride themselves in bloodless coups. They would just tell you, oh, this coup was bloodless. So it's a pity that in a democratic dispensation, what we sit to discuss are not the dividends of democracy, but we're talking about bloodletting, we're talking about youths being employed for the wrong reasons. And those videos that were coming out of Kano, for example, yesterday, were very, very, very disturbing. And it's a shame that we find ourselves at this point.
Now, Atedo, perhaps as an acknowledgement of how bad things could get within an election cycle, I remember the president during the February elections made a statement that, those who are caught, anybody caught snatching the ballot box should be dealt with, and I know that he faced heavy criticism. But what are your thoughts? I mean, when you hear that kind of statement and coming back to when you, like you said, when these things go unpunished, that's when we see an escalation.
Yes, I think it's not so much a case of do what I say, it's do what I do. There's a government, there's a ruling party. They're supposed to set the example. So it's all very well making pronouncements, and if people think that those pronouncements are not for real, or indeed people don't see any serious enforcement, or indeed what they see is people were reporting in Kano, security agents standing by, soldiers or police or whoever, whatever you call them, DSS standing still, and watching thugs, trying to brutalize voters. Was it deliberate? Were they told to just stand there and allow the thugs to have a field day? All these things have to be properly investigated. And my personal position has always been that every life that is lost must be investigated. You cannot have a society where somebody gets killed in Victoria Island, in Rivers State or in Kano, and the police just sort of take the corpse and say, oh, family, bury him. We have to find out who killed him and why. If it's a violent death in a modern society, you cannot even bury that corpse until you get the go-ahead from the authorities. That's the correct thing. But we have used elections as an excuse now. We've sunk so low. And this whole argument of, oh, it didn't start today, started some years ago, that's the more reason why you must do something today. Like the saying goes, the best time to have planted a tree was 25 years ago or 4 years ago. The second best time is today. We have to start doing some things differently from today. The excuse that others did it before you is just not good enough.
George, what would be a good place to start? I mean, it would appear on the face of it overwhelming. I mean, like you said, one just has to look at those videos over the weekend, and it creates this feeling of hopelessness. But we're not hopeless. We have a constitution, we have a people, we have security forces. Where would be a good place to start?
A good place to start would be to simply protect. Government should rise up to its responsibility to protect lives and property. That's the good place to start. And so every death must be seen. Every death that comes by way of violence must be investigated and punished if there's culpability. Now, they haven't said what we've said. It's not across the country that you find these violent incidents. I mean, there were elections conducted in some states where, in fact, the loser congratulated the winner. Some didn't even bother for the INEC results. Once the trend showed, they congratulated them. Now, those are leaders who are thinking of the greater benefit of this process for their own people. So we must isolate those states where it's becoming a habit to unleash mayhem. So there must be something germane to those states. And those are the things we need to investigate. Luckily, like we said, it's not as if it's pervasive. But in some areas, it's become the culture. And a culture of anarchy is unacceptable.
Atedo, one of such states is Rivers State, which is going to be our focus for today. I don't know, there's so many things being said about Rivers State, and not just being said, we hear the reports and we see some videos also. And now you yourself also have come together, about a few of you call yourselves the concerned citizens and stakeholders of Rivers State, and you want something to be done about the violence in Rivers State. Atedo, let me start with you. With this statement, you put together a number of things that you've seen that you're not happy about, and also you make some recommendations also. Let's start with, I think a good place to start would be political leaders unable to manage their differences and rivalries. Would you say that this is at the heart of the problem of Rivers State? Okay,
I think we should start by saying, is Rivers different from every other state? Sadly, I would probably say yes, in the sense that it is the worst. So that's what makes it different. So it's like getting a gold medal for violence, for misbehavior. So that is why the focus is on Rivers State, not because I'm from Rivers State. Yes, that helps. But in effect, if the place that had the most killings and the worst violence was Lagos State, I would be calling for a judicial commission of inquiry in Lagos State. So the point I'm making is that the responsible government, I mean federal government, must look at the state where we've had the most disgraceful incidents and start there to put things right. And to even give you a sense of history, some people almost justify the violence in 2019 by saying that they killed our people in 2015. Are they hinting that they waited 4 years for revenge? Does that mean that in Rivers State now, you can have an enemy, earmark him, and just wait for election day? And if you kill him on election day or the day before, the day after, you will go scot-free. Can you imagine what background that sets for the next elections? That's why we talk about escalating violence. Even more disturbing is that people begin to see patterns in the killings. You see, nobody is 100% stupid. Something happened, people drop dead everywhere. The following morning, you can count the dead bodies, find out where the incidents were worst. Yeah, and so when people begin to find patterns and look at it and say, hang on, nobody died here, nobody died here. Many people died there, many people died there. Rivers State is a delicate state in the sense that there are many different ethnic groups. Can you imagine what impression gets created if one or two ethnic groups begin to find that, or begin to see the obvious, which is that they were the biggest victims. Do you want them to start beginning to identify why were they the biggest victims? Were the other ethnic groups involved in sponsoring violence to take care of them because they didn't follow politically and so on? That's why government must act. We're not saying government should come out and do anything that is completely partisan or one-sided. If you have a judicial commission of inquiry, it's partly fact-finding, partly investigating. Everybody comes forward to say what happened. My brother was killed, my cousin died here, who shot him, people wearing this uniform. You begin to investigate. You put people in the witness box, people who are accused. If you don't take control, people start deciding to take the law into their own hands, and it's a slippery slope.
George, I mean, usually, and unfortunately also, many times during our election cycles, we see people voting along ethnic, religious lines. Some, for an outsider looking into Rivers State and thinking to himself, okay, could that be A, one of it? Two, is it I mean, Rivers State is also one of the states, and it's an oil-rich state. Is that also, could that also be at the heart of it?
Well, ethnicity will always be a problem in a complex country like Nigeria, but again, leadership can manage it. And in Rivers State, I don't know whether it would be completely true to say that the pattern of killings, you know, can relate to, let me say, particular ethnic groups. What you're seeing are people under the pretext of using ideology, i.e. you believe in one political party, to generally unleash mayhem. And you just really need to see how the pattern works. Today in Rivers State, the talk is all about PDP or APC. And it cuts across the entire spectrum of the ethnic divide. Okay. And the mayhem that's unleashed comes as a result of that. So you do not have a process that says the reason we're APC or PDP is because we can do better than the other in providing good governance. But it's simply about how we can get power at all costs and exclude everybody else. And that is what is more troubling than anything else. Today, there are hardly anybody who can talk freely in Port Harcourt. You cannot even sit at a bar in a classroom to discuss without tempers flaring up because you'll be branded APC or PDP. So there's very little room. Voices that want to discuss reason are drowned. And it's who's shouting the loudest that gets a hearing. And this is what's transported to the field. And so it's the violence on both sides. It's actually on both sides, not as if it's peculiar to one. It is who can unleash more mayhem than the other that sort of wins the day. And that is not what elections were designed to be. It is hindering everything that state can become. That state should ordinarily be a very prosperous state, maybe next to Lagos. And it showed the signs in the early days.
Okay.
But today is a massive reversal.
I've been speaking to Atedo-Peterside, founder and president, ANAP Foundation, and George Etomi, principal partner at George Etomi Partners. If you're just joining us, Atedo-Peterside, founder and president, ANAP Foundation, and George Etomi, principal partner, George Etomi Partners, are with me today, and we're discussing the way forward for elections in Rivers State. Let's also look at some other parts of the statement that you put out. Youths often being used, obviously, to perpetrate some of the violence that we see. Atedo, let me start with you. Now, for this part of, I mean, the whole way things unfold, the youth are always at the center of it. And some might say, oh, yes, that points to underlying social issues like unemployment, poverty. But what do you say in terms of how we can curb this trend to not allow youth to be used to fulfill, you know, the nefarious acts of these politicians? Yes,
you see, I'm always sad about the focus on youth. I always believe the buck stops somewhere. I prefer to focus on the leaders. It is the leaders that misuse the youth. So let's go to the root cause. What is it that is different about Rivers State? You follow me? There are youths all over Nigeria. It's not because Rivers youths are any worse than youths all over the country. It's because Rivers youths have been misled by the leaders of the major political organizations. It's those ones that have sent a signal that even if you listen to some videos and so on, do you get ready for an election by getting people to get ready by telling youth to get ready for war? Is that a responsible statement for a leader to make? on the eve of an election. So the point I'm making is that...
So would you say, is that across the board or some political parties? Or are you saying that that's the norm?
Listen, there are two major political parties in Rivers State. So I'm blaming the leadership of both.
Okay.
And when I say the leadership, at the very top of both.
Okay.
There are countries, there are societies, there are districts all over the world that could have witnessed violence. It was the actions of leaders with a vision, leaders who had tact and control, who stopped the worst from happening. In the case of Rivers State, we must put the satellite on the two leaders. Because if something goes wrong in CNBC, who am I going to blame first? Your CEO. What was he doing? Where was he? You cannot, in the UK, they're discussing Brexit. There's talk about Margaret Thatcher, sorry, I said Margaret Thatcher. Theresa may have to move aside. You cannot handle a problem, mishandle a problem. It leads to crisis, violence, and so on, and you hang in there forever, and you tell me to go and look at the youths. I believe that if I handle the youths, I'll handle them differently. I'm not saying that, please don't get me wrong. People normally jump to the easy excuse of saying, but you cannot have an army, you cannot have an election in Rivers State without having the army or police come out. What are the army and police coming out to do? We have had elections before in Nigeria. I remember when Oshomole was running for Edo State's second term, he complained so much about military presence all over the place in Edo State. At the end of the day, he himself realized that the soldiers only came out to enforce law and order. They were not partisan. They came out to make sure that nobody misbehaved. He won the election. And his comments after the election were a total variance from his comments before the election about the presence of the military. Everybody welcomes police, military presence that is non-partisan and is out there to ensure that nobody misbehaves. The type we all abhor is when you start hearing comments like there are soldiers or Air Force in collation center, people are shooting at the youths and all kinds of stuff. The army itself tells you that they never deployed any soldiers to collation center. Then how did the soldiers get there? And some of the victims, and it's all this claiming unknown persons. Hey, somebody's in hospital. He's a soldier. He was shot at a particular venue. Was he meant to be at that venue? These are the kind of things we should be investigating. That's why we say that. Without jumping to conclusions, if you have a proper judicial commission of inquiry, people died, you will know where the person died. Judge is saying that perhaps there are no patterns. Let's go and count the LGAs in Rivers State. Let each person mention names of those who died, and so on. We will then see all those things. So the point I'm making is that when you begin an investigation, you begin a process that makes people know that they will be held to account for their actions. It doesn't matter whether you're INEC, whether you're police, whether you're army, whether you're APC, whether you're PDP. A crime is a crime.
George,
and whoever commits that crime must be brought to book. So
this judicial commission of inquiry that you're hoping will be set up, has anything come of it? Have you spoken to the government or what's been set up at the moment? We don't know. Okay. We don't know yet. We're just hoping. This is just a call for it. Yeah, this is a call for it. And what we're looking for, first of all, we also said that we welcomed the Army's own introspection. But the Army has said that they will investigate. Yes, for their own, yes, and it's an introspection which is very good. But we're saying that beyond that, we need to look at the wider causes of violence in Rivers State. That's why we're saying set up a judicial service of judicial inquiry, okay. And they would look into the remote causes. When you speak to different people in Rivers State, they have different perspectives. And they are all very vociferous about their different perspectives. So you need a dispassionate and independent voice that can listen to what people are saying, so that you can get to the root causes. How about involving, sorry to interrupt, how about involving, the conversations you have been pointing to the leadership of the two main political parties. Sure. How do we get those leaders themselves to be part of these conversations? Judicial commission of inquiry, there will be someone. Some of them, people will come and point fingers at them and say they played their own role. Yeah. Some of them were present when somebody got shot. So if you want details, you see, I hear what George is saying about root cause and all that, but hey, at the end of the day, those are theories. Somebody who was shot dead at a particular spot, there are witnesses. The person who shot him is known. His name is known. He wore a uniform. The name tag is there. It was photographed.
Let him come out, put him in the witness box, let him come out and say that he was not the person.
Okay, but
so my point is that you need both.
With the picture that's being painted, with the kind of atmosphere that's in Rivers State, I mean, some people might be feeling, am I safe? I mean, what is my safety guaranteed if I'm going to come out and testify, in this, George? I mean,
this is the point. This is the point I'm making. You've got to look. Yes, there are acts. When an act, a murder is committed, yes, you look for it. But there's also, at law, you look at the action and then you look at the guilty intent, which is why an inquiry like this will look at both.
Sure.
If you shoot, it's no excuse. But you go back. Did I shoot because you shot my own cousin the last time? And all that. You look back and you dig into it. You talked about the youths. That's one of my biggest concerns. Rivers State, today, we survive because oil prices are doing fairly well. But we know the oil economy is going to be over in another 20 years. What are these youths being prepared for? Can they compete? Do they know any other way of making money apart from these cycles of violence and unleashing mayhem? And all that. A reorientation is also required. So whilst we're dealing with the culpable side of people actually doing wrong, you must look at how you can bring healing to the place. Everybody can justify anything they want to do. So there's a need to dig deeper and see how we can bring about healing. Okay,
Atedo, is there still a sense of, because here in the Southwest, we talk about the need for voter education, power belonging in the hands of the people for them to decide who their leaders are going to be, and ultimately they being the ones who decide their destiny, their future, who their leaders are going to be. Would you say that is lost in Rivers State? Do people no longer have that sense of that power in their hands as the electorate?
I think you talk to many people in Rivers State and they tell you that the elections in Rivers State slowly have stopped being elections. It's just been a display of force and willful violence and survival of the fittest. So many innocent, ordinary voters don't even come out on election day. Why should they? If a government cannot guarantee their safety, why would they come out? So the result is that an increasingly volatile segment of society begins to be the only one that determines who gets political power. This is why I talk about the moral hazard problem, because if my mother and people like of her age and co on have all withdrawn for the things, they won't go out and vote again. Then it's only the cultists and all those people that decide what goes on. And let me also add that when you ask George about the statement we put out, is it what next? I think it's a movement in the sense that if something is going seriously wrong, you have to identify the critical things you have to do, one or two of them, that will begin to make people believe there's a sense of justice. If people feel that there's no sense of justice whatsoever, then it's mayhem. Yeah. So the idea of this, in fact, perhaps the next stage is that many people have come forward saying, look, this is a statement, they like it, they want to sign on to it. So we'll probably take it one step further and allow those people who believe in it to sign on.
Okay,
probably
because so far there are seven.
Yes, we were the seven original signatories. Okay. So that if you read the statement and you want to sign on, probably the next thing we'll do is to make it possible for you to sign on, so that we begin to build together a movement of people who are saying enough is enough. So, and you don't have to come from Rivers State to support the statement. Although I think ideally we should give people a chance to state which state they are from. So it can be Rivers or anywhere, it doesn't matter.
Okay, George, I mean...
Yeah, but I agree completely with what Atedo said in that regard. What we have done is we've sort of... it was as if there were no voices other than guns and wrong leadership that you were hearing from Rivers State. And I know we're much better than that. So what we're saying is, come out. Let the silent majority, and this is really what they are, begin to have their voices heard. So the whole idea is get more people sign on to this thing.
What about CSOs? Because I know usually CSOs...
Yes,
they're already on the ground.
Yes, you see, but that's also why if you have something which other people can sign sign up to. So please, let's be very careful. By my nature, I like to hear both sides. Let somebody also tell me why they do not want a judicial commission of inquiry. We want to have that discussion. Okay. You follow me? So the one is not saying that it must be my way or no other way. Let people also tell us why they don't want it. Let them also show us how these things will get better or how they will progress without giving people a sense of rendering accounts, holding people culpable, punishing people for their actions, and so on.
Finally, George, we only have 60 seconds left.
No, I just wanted to address one quick part to this whole thing. Is that the reason is I believe that there's a large dose of healing is required in Rivers State, because if you ask some people about the military presence, they will tell you they felt safer having the military around, and that without the military, they were faced with guns from other sections of it. So both sides, like I said, have strong arguments for and against. But the only thing we're worried about is that the picture emerging is one of anarchy. And anarchy forbodes horrible, I mean, anything horrible
but
you can think of.
Going forward?
So no, we have to be optimistic. Yes, right. The answer is yes.
I've been speaking to Atedo-Peterside, founder and president, ANAP Foundation, and George Etomi, principal partner, George Etomi and Partners. Well, that's it on Beyond Markets. Thank you so much for being a part of it. Remember, you can watch the show at 5 p.m. West African time daily and have access to all previous episodes of the show on our website at cnbcafrica.com. You can also stay engaged with the hashtag Beyond Markets, and you can send tweets to my Twitter handle too at Esther or Awoniyi. From myself and the team, it's bye for now.